When we explore the history of horror films, some films stand out as timeless masterpieces that evoke spooky stories and memorable characters in our minds. The Silence of the Lambs, 1991, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, and Psycho, 1960, are a few of these classic movies, each leaving its own mark on the hallowed halls of the genre. But beneath the surface of these cinematic masterpieces, there is a dark truth that few people may be aware of. Ed Gein, the notorious butcher of Plainfield, is a terrifying ghost who served as the macabre inspiration for the nightmare adversaries that still frighten audiences today. The macabre legacy of Ed Gein is woven throughout horror mythology. His horrifying acts captured in celluloid nightmares that captivate and frighten audiences to this day. A terrifying reminder of human nature's deepest tendencies, a tale of depravity and insanity surfaced from the unsettling depths of his rural Wisconsin home. We uncover the terrifying narrative of a man whose horrific deeds would reverberate across history and permanently alter the landscape of horror film as we go through the twisting hallways of Ed Gein's mind. Before starting the video, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay up to date with the latest uploads. Ed Gein's childhood and his initial murder. Edward Theodore Gein was born on a muggy August day in 1906 among the calm environment of La Crosse, Wisconsin. Born into a family dominated by his mother Augusta, young Ed grew up amid a strong stew of religious passion and stringent moral ideology. Ed and Henry were raised by their mother, Augusta Gein, an authoritarian and steadfast lady who drilled into them the ideas that women are inherently immoral and that evil exists everywhere. Augusta decided to protect her young kids from the corrupt outside world, which she saw as a bottomless pit. Augusta planned her family's transfer to Plainfield, a rural community remote from the alleged moral deterioration of the city life, in order to shield them from what she believed to be the ubiquitous impact of sin and depravity. Despite their remote property, Augusta never wavered in her advocacy of seclusion from the alleged moral taint of the outside world. For young Ed, the world centered around his secluded homestead, with his only social encounters being when he would travel to attend school. His attempts to interact with his friends were hampered by his socially awkward manner and speech handicap, making him an easy target for derision and abuse. Ed was alone and shunned during his early years, but he found comfort and company in his mother's constant presence. Her strong influence was evident during this time. Ed saw Augusta as a mother figure as well as a spiritual mentor who shaped his outlook on life and gave him a deep sense of respect and affection. Ed never resisted Augusta, although Henry did at times. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that Ed Gein's older brother Henry was probably his first victim. In 1944, Ed and Henry decided to burn some grass in their fields to clean them, but only one of the brothers would survive the night. Their fire unexpectedly went out of control as they were working. Additionally, Ed informed the firefighters that Henry had disappeared when they came to put out the fire. Soon later, his body was discovered face down in the swamp, having asphyxiated to death. It appeared to be a horrible accident at the time. After Ed's older brother Henry passed away tragically, the Gein family was left feeling abandoned and bereaved. Ed struggled with these emotions. Following Henry's death, Ed was left to take care of his mother alone, whose condition quickly deteriorated. Ed's love for Augusta grew more intense, even obsessional, as her health deteriorated, and he tried to deal with his brother's death and the looming threat of loneliness. Even still, Ed was unable to escape his mother's controlling presence and continued to be trapped in her web of power while taking on caregiving responsibilities. After Augusta died in 1945, Ed found himself alone in a world without his mother's presence to guide him. Into the depths of his own mind, alone and heartbroken, he set out on a dark and twisting journey that would ultimately take him down a road of terrible depravity and misery. Unimaginable horrors performed by the Butcher of Plainfield. Following Augusta's death, Ed Gein's spiral into insanity quickened, and his previously modest home was transformed into a hideous memorial to his mother. He had boarded up the rooms that Augusta had occupied and turned them into hallowed monuments to her memory, all done with a spooky devotion. Ed found himself completely engrossed in his growing obsessions, while sequestered in the isolation of his home, delving into a dark and horrible world. His days were dominated by a macabre obsession with Nazi medical experiments, a sick passion with horror literature, and a ravenous intake of pornography. Free from the restraints of social convention, Ed preferred the twisted company of his own dark thoughts to that of people. He was a chilling embrace of his morbid anxieties, and had no interest for romantic entanglements. For a decade, the Gein farm remained in the shadows, a forgotten relic in the wide expanse of rural Wisconsin. But everything changed in November 1957, when Bernice Worden, the proprietor of a neighborhood hardware shop, vanished and left only bloodstains behind. Worden, a 58-year-old widow, was last seen at her store. Who was her most recent client? That would be Ed Gein, who had gone inside the store to buy a gallon of antifreeze. What was discovered by investigators within Ed Gein's home? When the police went to Ed's farmhouse to look into it, they discovered that they were in the middle of a nightmare come true. Authorities discovered material there that served as inspiration for horror films. Bernice Worden's head was removed from her body, and her lifeless body hung from the rafters by her ankles, acting as a terrifying presage of the horrors to come. Investigators discovered a terrible scene of inhumanity and death as they searched through the rundown property. Whole and fractured bones strewn on the flooring, skulls adorning bedposts, and the kitchen utensils fashioned from human remains lying in various places. But what was truly incomprehensible were the home objects made from human skin. Haunting items of Ed's spiral into lunacy included chairs covered in human hide, a skin-lined wastebasket, leggings made from the skin of human legs, and masks improvised from the faces of the dead. Horrifying monument to Ed's psychotic dreams were the pieces of apparel constructed from human flesh, which included a corset fashioned from a woman's torso, a lampshade fashioned from a human face, and a belt studded with nipples. Investigators discovered an abundance of disfigured body parts, each more gruesome than the last, within the grisly collection. The macabre discoveries included noses, fingernails, and the genitalia of 9 women, all proof of Ed's heinous crimes of desecration and mutilation. The discovery of Mary Hogan's bones, a 1954 missing tavern keeper whose fate had long been unknown, was maybe the most horrifying of them. Ed's revelation that he had gone to local cemeteries looking for bodies that looked like his mother, together with his ghoulish scheme to make a woman's suit out of their flesh, provided a horrifying window into the depths of his insanity. Following the inquiry, Ed's atrocities were indelibly recorded in the annals of true crime history, and his name would come to represent unimaginable terror. However, the full scope of his wickedness and the depths of his insanity would remain a mystery to those who ventured into the deepest corners of the human brain. What was the number of people killed by Ed Gein? Ed Gein was quickly brought into custody by the authorities after his home was the site of one of the most horrific discoveries in criminal history. Ed was confined to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane in 1957 after a trial in which he was found not guilty by reason of insanity. There, a schizophrenia diagnosis was made for him, illuminating the bizarre processes going on within his head. Ed's farmhouse inexplicably burnt down while he was in the hospital, adding a further degree of mystery to the already grisly story of the Butcher of Plainfield. Even with this setback, Plainfield, a little town, will always be plagued by Ed's horrific legacy. A decade later, Ed was declared competent to stand trial and was eventually found guilty of Bernice Worden's murder. He was never tried for Mary Hogan's murder, though, as the authorities thought it would be pointless to pursue a man who would live out the rest of his life in a mental facility. Still, it remains to be seen how far Ed Gein's reign of terror actually reached. Even though he only acknowledged killing Worden and Hogan, the finding of up to 40 victims in his home points to a far more dark reality. It's probable that a great number of people were also killed by the Ed Gein, with their whereabouts being lost to history forever. Whatever the precise figure, Ed's name will always conjure images of horrifying terror. His twisted activities have permanently altered the history of actual crime, arousing both interest and terror in equal measure. Ed's narrative never fails to pique the interest of those who are willing to explore the darkest recesses of the human psyche, from the eerie solitude of his isolated farmhouse to the bizarre inventions made from human bones. His impact does, in fact, go much beyond the boundaries of his little Wisconsin town. The iconic movie personas of Leatherface, Buffalo Bill, and Norman Bates stand as unsettling reminders of the horrific legacy left by the Butcher of Plainfield. While audiences may swarm cinemas to see their nightmares brought to life on a large screen, the real fear is realizing that Ed's narrative is a terrifying look into the darkest recesses of human depravity rather than a work of fiction. Enjoying our content? Please like and share video with your friends, and don't forget to share your thoughts in comments section. Don't miss out on future videos. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay up to date with the latest uploads. Thanks for watching.